It was a Halloween night, and this was the only thing that I thought could help. Alone. God knows where. I cried. I didn't know where my friends were. I didn't even know where I was. But crying. Fuck. Crying was the only thing that felt good. We had gone out trick-or-treating. Mel was a sheet ghost with glasses. Taylor and Christy were some girls from some dumb movie they liked. Trey was a tiger with like pierced ears and some weird hair. I don't know. I just remember how much fun we were all having. I had worked all year on my costume. Oh, the hours of labor I put into that thing. Who fucking knows what happened to it? I was an astronaut. Like the real deal. Not, hey, let's get a fishbowl and a jumper. No, I had real parts from real spacesuits. It was all a mashup of different suits, but was still authentic. It was real. They all laughed at my idea, but their faces when I came out in that thing, they were mesmerized. I could tell. We had gone around 3/4 of the entire neighborhood at least. My bag was full. I remember because he mentioned it. Him. This house was amazing. We approached and there was a fog machine casting mist out into the lawn. Red lights illuminating the dead bodies in the grass. No one wanted to go up, but I was so excited. So ready to get more candy and show off my suit. I went. I stepped up the walkway, winding through it. On either side of me were zombie animatronics, just screaming and gurgling in my ears. Oh, the porch was just covered in fake blood. So thick in some areas, it was black. I knocked on the door after seeing no doorbell. The anticipation was building. I was so excited to meet the person who set up this awesome display. The door opened. He smiled at me, his bright eyes shining from the red lights behind me. I smiled back, fogging up the glass of my helmet. He said, "Oh, an astronaut, I see. Well, that's the most creative costume I've seen all night." He laughed. It was such a nice thing to say. "Oh, look at all the candy you have. Almost full." I laughed too. I said the normal line, "Trick or treat," and opened my bag. He just stared at me. Then he peered out past me. I turned around to see if the gang had followed me. That stupid smile still plastered on my face. He pulled me inside. It was so fast and the door closed so quickly. I had no time to react. I had no time to think. I turned around and looked at him. The lighting inside was glaringly white. It hurt my eyes. I squinted as I looked up at him. He just smiled, staring down at me. He licked his lips and said, "I chose Trick." He laughed, and this time, it was deeper, meaner, like he was laughing at someone who had just gotten hurt. I tried to pull away from him, but he was so strong. He dragged me over to the couch despite my protest. Zip ties covered the table. I screamed. I didn't know what else to do. Yeah, of course I had seen the mafia movies where they tie people up with zip ties and toss them in the trunk of their cars. I knew I was in trouble. Next thing I know, there's a knock at the door. Multiple knocks. He quickly took my hands behind my back and zipped them up, just like those fucking movies. He yanked my helmet off, no doubt breaking something. No matter now, I haven't seen the thing since the night I wore it. There were bandanas on the table, and I already knew what was next. I screamed again, this time calling for my friends. He wrapped it around my mouth and tied it to the back of my head. I had never felt so suffocated. I fell over onto the couch, struggling to breathe, watching him as he walked to the door. I couldn't see the door, but I heard him open it. Before I could get to my feet, he had all of my friends inside. I stood there, waiting. They were talking to him. He had convinced them I had come in because he had a haunted house set up inside, that there were people inside waiting to scare them. He was right. Trey entered first. He saw me. We made eye contact just as this man stepped out from behind him. He wore a gas mask. It was green and perfectly wrapped around his little bald head. His big eyes gazed out at me. He whipped out a can, and just as Trey turned to look at him, he sprayed Trey in the face. I mean, full bore. Everyone screamed. They tried to scatter, but as soon as they took in whatever he sprayed, bam, they hit the floor. I tried to run, but my fucking suit caught this asshole's coffee table. I fell. My face hit the carpet and I took a deep breath through my nose. And I don't remember anything until the dirt. He must have taken me there while I was unconscious. I was so alone. I woke up only in my underwear. The zip ties and bandana were gone. The once white of my underwear was now a cream color and smeared in dirt from the floor. I wonder where I was, where my friends were, and how long I had been there. The dirt walls were so cold. I sat and shivered in the dark, assessing what to do, what there was to do. The only light came from the flashlight in the corner. It was propped up, pointed at the ceiling. I had looked up only to see the roof was plywood. I stood up, only having enough space to crouch, and shoved upwards. The wood was cold, just like the dirt around me. That's when I realized I must be underground. I'm in a grave. It was long enough for me to lay in, as I discovered after collapsing. I wept into my arms, not knowing what to do. I was 13 and buried alive. I thought, what if I claw my way out? Surely this dirt must lead upwards. Only I realized doing that could make everything around me collapse, suffocating me. Oh, if I thought the rag around my mouth was bad, I could only imagine choking on dirt. So, I lay down and cried. My nose was plugged up. My eyes hurt. I thought about my family, who I thought I'd never see again. Exhausted. I think I slept. I slept in my grave. I woke up God knows how much later, feeling a cold draft on my foot. I spun around as quickly as one can in a grave-sized for a 13-year-old and shone the flashlight on what I expected to be someone. It was a pipe. I knelt down in front of it, feeling the fresh air. Someone was keeping me alive with this stupid pipe. I was so terrified that I didn't even bother screaming into the thing. I just breathed. I lay down, placing my head next to the pipe and breathed. It cleared my fuzzy mind a bit, only leading to more panic. I started to cry again. It was all I could do. I had been stripped of everything and buried alive. I don't know how much time passed until I heard a thunk. It was light, but I knew I heard it. Another one, and another. It was coming from above me. I crawled to the corner furthest from the noise. The flashlight aimed up. The plywood shook with each thunk. I thought, Jesus, is he coming to see if I'm dead? I sat in that corner, trembling until the noise was so loud I couldn't take it. I screamed, just screamed. It was no particular word, just a strange, demented sound that came out. Suddenly, the thumping stopped. I paused. I think even my heart stopped for that brief second. The thumping came like thunder. I screamed again, tears just pouring out of me. Light came at the edges of the plywood. I stared at this, shut off the flashlight, and held it like a weapon. So suddenly, I could have had a heart attack. The plywood was ripped off of me. White light came in as it was a cloudy morning. 2 officers stared back at me, looking just as terrified as I was. They both looked at each other, then back to me, and smiled. Aliana. They reached down and helped me up. I let them. My body had gone limp. They hoisted me to the surface. By my memory, I looked to be about 6 feet underground. I was really in a grave. Looking around, I saw I was in someone's backyard. I knew it was his. I'm not dumb. The officers carried me out to the front through a side yard. I saw the front yard decorations and wept like a newborn. Police tape had been wrapped around the entire place. They loaded me into the ambulance, and I never saw that neighborhood or my friends ever again. Now it's my 23rd birthday, exactly 10 years since I was buried in my own grave. This is the first time I'd ever written down the events of that night, the first time I'd even recounted them. I had moved into a new house as soon as I was released from the hospital. My parents had somehow already moved in that short time span. I still live here, in this quiet little neighborhood, and I wonder, why don't the police ever rescue the little ones I collect and bury in my backyard every Halloween? Do you know how hard it is not to blink? No, seriously. How many times do you think the average person blinks in 1 minute? How about a day? I'll give you the answer. Roughly 15,000 to 20,000 times a day. That's 15 to 20 times per minute for the entire time you're awake. Granted, that's the automatic number when you're not thinking about it. Maybe you'd argue it's less if you're trying to blink less. But do you know how hard it is to continually focus on not blinking? Pretty damn hard. That's why staring contests exist. The average person can only go 1 to 2 minutes without blinking, maximum. And that's not nearly long enough. Because if it's haunting you, even 2 minutes between blinks won't give you enough time to get away. It's haunting me now. I don't have long. I'm typing this with my eyes closed to prevent me from blinking. Occasionally there's a benefit of working a desk job where you type all day, and your fingers having sufficient muscle memory to type with your eyes closed is apparently one of them. Maybe this sounds like the solution to you. After all, You can't blink if your eyes are closed, but you can't keep your eyes closed forever. Even if you try, your reflexes will thwart you eventually. Your focus will slip for an instant, and your eyes will flicker open. And by the time you shut them again, that counts as a blink. I've had my eyes closed almost constantly for the last 2 hours, since I realized it was hunting me. I guess I'm lucky to have realized it at all. Most people don't. By the time they see it and know it's after them, it's too late. If it's close enough to be in sight, another few minutes of blinks is all it will take to reach you. It gets closer every time you blink. That's 15 to 20 steps per minute. Even if you run, hell, even if you drive, you'll blink enough that it will catch up. You can't drive with your eyes closed, although honestly, crashing into a tree might be a better way to die than what it does to you when it reaches you. Planes don't work either. I saw someone try, but it isn't human. It's not restricted by airline tickets or physics. It simply appeared on the plane and it was all the way down the aisle in 10 blinks. I found out about it years ago, by accident. I saw it catch someone in a crowded club. I thought the person was on drugs at first. She was screaming about a monster chasing her, and how it was getting closer each time she opened her eyes. But then I saw it catch her, and it was terrible. I think it chooses its next victim by proximity. Although it seems to wait a day or so to start the chase. I didn't realize that at first. It was years before I saw it again. There were a lot of people in that club after all. It could have gone after any of them. In time, I began to think it was a hallucination. Why wouldn't I? The effects of strobe lights and drinking seemed more likely than what I'd seen. But then I saw it on that plane. As soon as it appeared, I recognized it. The poor man was shocked. I think he was confident a plane would stop it. He was wrong. He didn't react quickly enough to shut his eyes or stop blinking. It caught him in seconds. That's when I figured out more about it. It was a work trip. I was on the plane with a group of coworkers, and one of them turned out to be its next unlucky target. She died 2 days later, in the hotel room. The scene was horrifying. The state of the body made it clear what had done it to her. Another coworker died when we got back the next day. That was in his house. He sent us all a frantic text message before he died. He realized it was the blinking that let him move closer. He told us not to blink if it came after us next. He sent the message with his eyes closed, he said. But I guess he opened them eventually because his decimated remains were found the next morning. I tried researching it after that. I can't find anything that looks like it online. You think people would share stories of it if they've seen things like I have, but maybe they're scared that doing so would make them the next target. Maybe it does. Or maybe it has a way of wiping references to itself. I think it likes the fear of being unknown. After all, if people knew what it was sooner, there'd be a lot less blinking when you saw it. The time it takes for a victim to realize that it only moves when you blink is time it uses to get closer. By then, it doesn't matter that you've realized. You're already screwed. Or maybe it somehow affects the minds of those who've seen it, warps them so that they can't put their thoughts into words. At least until it's too late. until you're the next victim. I know I never tried, but I don't think I could have written this out before now. I think some force may have stopped me. The closest thing I could find online were weeping angels from the television show Doctor Who. I never watched that show. It doesn't look like any of those angels. It's so much worse. I thought we might be in the clear after my second coworker's death. His house is nowhere near our workplace. He doesn't live near the rest of us either. That seemed to have worked for a while. I practiced not blinking, just in case. But a year passed and I didn't see any signs of it. I'm sure it killed lots of people in the meantime. If the timeline I've seen is any indication, it catches someone every 2 days or so. That's roughly 180 people. Yet, I couldn't help but be relieved that at least it wasn't someone I knew, or me. Until yesterday morning. I went out and met my brother at a park near his house. He'd called me and asked if I could meet up in half an hour. He sounded frantic and wouldn't explain why, so of course I said yes. I realized my mistake when I got there. It was standing across the lawn, watching my brother. My brother was already in bad shape. His face and hands were bloody. When I got closer, I realized that he gouged his own eyes out. You can't blink if you destroyed your own eyes, but it was still watching him. He begged me to help. He said he could still sense it there. He turned his head in my direction when he heard my voice, and it stepped forward. He turned back when he heard the footsteps, then back to me. Another step. It was treating his head turns as blinks, and with no way for him to tell exactly where it was, there was no way to keep it at bay indefinitely. I tried to tell him. It didn't matter. Any turn of his head brought it closer. There were other people around. Most saw what was happening and quickly turned away. Maybe they'd seen it before and wanted to avoid being its next target. Maybe they had no idea what it was, but just didn't want to get involved in a creepy situation in the middle of the park. Someone listened to my plea to call 911. I called them too. Nothing mattered. The cops came, picked him up off the ground, and loaded him into the ambulance. Even his head movements as they helped him walk apparently counted as blinks. I guess when the victim no longer has eyes, its rules bend a bit. He didn't make it to the hospital. I heard it attack him in the ambulance. The paramedics jumped out, pale as ghosts, covered in his blood. They'd never seen anything like it, they said. Happened too fast for them to do anything. Obviously, I was heartbroken, but there was still a large portion of my brain dedicated solely to the hope that it wasn't hunting me next. No sign of it yesterday didn't mean anything though. It usually takes a break of a day or two, lets its next victim put a little distance between him and it. Maybe it needs some sort of cool down period too. No sign of it this morning either. I was starting to let my hopes creep up. After all, it could have chosen anyone in that park. The cops, the bystanders, the paramedics who had been right next to my brother when it caught him. A few hours ago, I realized my hopes were in vain. After all my near misses, my turn had finally come. It was coming after me. I was at the office, Suddenly I glanced out the window and saw it outside, in the street. It was watching me. I know I should have stayed there and closed my eyes immediately, but I was not about to die in my shitty office. Do you know how hard it is not to blink, even when you've practiced not blinking? Even when you know it's after you and moves closer every time you blink? Still, very hard. I left my car in the parking lot at work and took the bus home, so I could keep my eyes closed. I only opened them a few times, to step onto the bus, to get off it, to unlock my door, to find my computer. But it was enough. Even a few blinks let it get dangerously close. My eyes are still closed. I haven't opened them once since I sat down at my computer to type this. It's in the room with me, probably only 5 blinks away. I sense it behind me, watching me. I know I don't have long. I could sit here for hours, but I'll eventually open my eyes. Just an instant of slipped focus is all it takes. Eventually I'll get sleepy, and then instinct will take over. Best case, I'd last a few days, but even then, it will catch me soon enough. Nowhere and no one can help me. I can practically feel its anticipation. It's ready. It knows it's got me. Blinding myself won't work. I learned that from my brother. All that does is allow it to bend its own rules. At least this way, I know it's still bound by blinking, but I don't want to sit here and wait to die either. I'm typing this up before I try my last idea. One final effort to stop it. I've thought about it a lot, and I think it might work. It requires me to open my eyes and keep them open, but I can do it. Hopefully 2 minutes between blinks is enough. I'm going to leave this here. My hope is that my plan works, and that I can finish this story immediately after with an update on how to stop it. If not, well, I guess this will never be shared anywhere. Someone will find it on my computer eventually. In that case, I tried. I feel it watching me. I think it knows I'm about to try something. All I can do now is hope to God that it works. Wish me luck. Here it goes. I really don't know what I was worried about earlier. So much fear for no reason. I think I was wrong. I'm not sure it moves through blinking at all. I'm not even sure it hurts people. I think maybe I imagined all the murders. I think it actually may be friendly, despite what it looks like, and that if you see it, you should definitely blink as much as possible. After all, do you know how hard it is not to blink? You are going to ask why on earth I would work at a circus if I was afraid of clowns. And that's shitty of you, because you know the answer. I had no other option. People weren't exactly hiring in my skill set. None. At the time. But I gotta eat. So I took the first job offered. That just happened to be a circuit in a traveling circus. Don't get me wrong. I've got nothing against the artists. They're good guys. Would give you the shirt off their backs. But once they put on the face paint, I don't know. It just gives me the willies. I tried to hide it, but of course, everyone found out. There was a lot of teasing. But what can you expect? They were all thinking what you were thinking now. Anyway, I decided the only way to conquer my fears was to face them head on. So whenever a clown jumped out at me or I found a clown mask in my bunk, I just grinned and bore it. Now, there's something to know about the circus. There are two types of workers. Ones who were born into the life and aim to die here, and people down on their luck and passing through. There's so much turnover, it's hard to keep track of who's who sometimes. So when I saw a clown I didn't recognize, I assumed it was a new hire. I was up at the arch picking up trash chucked by idiots waiting in line. That's what happens when you don't have any talent to speak of and work at a fucking circus. I'd paused to give my poor back a break when I saw a flash of color in the tree line. "Hey," I said, "no loitering. Either get in line or get your ass out of here. I've got a bit of a mouth on me. It's why they didn't put me in a customer service position." Well, when I yelled, the figure came out of the trees. And wouldn't you know, it was a fucking clown. I'm not exaggerating when I say my asshole clenched at the sight of those oversized shoes and white face paint. "Hey man," I said, forcing a smile. "Sorry, thought you were a guest." He didn't say anything, just stared at me with a giant smile. "You Adam? Or Elijah? Sorry, I'm not good with names." Instead of answering, he reached up and squeaked his nose. I forced a laugh. Very funny. Sure, this will make a great story for the boys later. I turned around and started back for the circus entrance. I was doing my best to put on a brave face, but God, I was wound up like a fucking mousetrap. I hadn't gone 2 steps before I heard another squeak, except it didn't come from behind me. It was to my left. Time seemed to slow down as I turned. Stepping out of the woods was another clown, this one with curly red hair and a big red bow tie. Haha, my voice shook. I looked from one clown to the other. "Nice one, guys. You got me good." Neither of them moved. I giggled nervously and was about to head out when I heard another squeak, right behind me. Slowly I turned around so scared I thought I was going to puke. Not a foot away stood the largest clown I'd ever seen. His arms so muscled his polka dot shirt strained against them. A hilariously small bowler's hat sat atop his bald head, and a large plastic daisy was tucked into his lapel. Even with all the makeup, I knew he wasn't part of the circus. "Hey," I said, rooted to the spot in shock. "Hey, who the fuck are you?" Something sprayed out of the fake daisy, hitting me full in the face. I gagged and stumbled, black spots flashing before my eyes. As I tried to reorient myself, the other 2 clowns approached, their big shoes flopping as they walked. Their painted smiles turned predatory. A moment later, I was on my hands and knees, head swimming. 3 pairs of giant shoes clustered around me, the clowns looming silently above. The next second, my head hit the ground, and everything faded into blackness. I don't really remember the next part so good. There was a lot of laughter. I remember that. All kinds of laughing. Ruckus laughter. High-pitched giggles. Barking chuckles. At one point, there was laughter that sounded like crying. It never stopped. I remember it hurt. That was another thing that never stopped. It felt like my skin was being stretched like taffy, and try as I might, I couldn't move. There was something talking to me, someone in a white coat, but he couldn't be a doctor. Doctors don't wear white face paint and red squeaky noses. Now, he kept saying, and his hands were moving, but I couldn't see what he was doing. Just settle down. It'll all work out. You see? You'll be much happier once we're done. The next thing I knew, I was in an ambulance. I'd been missing for 4 days. By the time they found me, I wasn't doing well. There must have been some drugs in that damn Daisy, because it about wiped me off the map. The cops searched the warehouse where I'd been discovered, but they didn't find who took me. They did, however, find a lot of surgical tools, all of them covered in my blood. The doctors tried to fix me. I know they did. They worked with me for months, trying to undo what those psychos made me into. And they succeeded. A little. My feet are almost normal size again, and I can walk okay. My nose looks like a normal nose now, but they haven't been able to fix the smile. I can't stand to look at myself in the mirror. Every time I do, I just see. My therapist says it'll get better with time. What the fuck kind of advice is that? How long do I have to wait until the sight of my own face doesn't terrify me? Well, today I found out. Dr. Foster gives me exercises. They're supposed to help me adjust. One of them is looking in the bathroom mirror. At first, I couldn't look at myself. I looked at anything else. The towel rack, the bathtub, my makeup bag. But gradually, I made progress. I could look at the top of my head. They didn't touch my hair, thank God. Then at my forehead. I moved on to my eyes, which were bloodshot and dark circled, but still mine. My 2 big ears, but those are just from my dad's side of the family. Then my nose, which I actually liked better after surgery. But I could never look at my mouth for longer than a few seconds. It's grotesque. It's frozen in an insane smile. The corners pulled up into my cheeks, exposing my coffee-stained teeth. Nothing makes the muscles relax. The doctors still don't know what those freaks did to me. I had to look away when I got to my mouth. Usually, I'd curl up on the couch and cry for hours. But today, I had an epiphany. I was struggling not to look away when I realized what it was that bothered me. There was something missing. My mouth looked unfinished. Then the light bulb clicked on in my head. I rifled around in my makeup bag, tossing away blush and eyeliner. What I was looking for was the bottom. With a rush of exhilaration, I took the lipstick and started drawing, on and around, until finally, my face looked complete. I set the red lipstick aside and surveyed my handiwork. It looked even better than I'd hoped. I guess a clown isn't really a clown without her painted smile. I lived on the second floor of an apartment block in the suburbs and worked as an engineer. I was married for 5 years, until my wife died in her sleep. When I was married, the apartment was a very different place. It was ours rather than mine. There was an atmosphere of messy happiness. There were clothes everywhere, plants, books, photographs, music playing, and we were always talking. We would talk long into the night. I was away when my wife died, thousands of miles distant, working on a construction project. It was almost 12 hours before I listened to the voicemail from her sister telling me, and at first, it seemed unreal. My wife was 31, 2 years older than me. The last time I had seen her, she had been laughing, pulling the cover off a duvet, ready to put it in the washing machine. She died of a brain aneurysm. I learned this 5 days later when I finally managed to get home after a journey delayed by flights with no availability in a vicious storm. My wife's sister told me about the aneurysm in the car from the airport. We were going straight to the Chapel of Rest. I had left my luggage at the airport, going I guess around the carousel unclaimed. I no longer cared. I had to be supported to go into the room where my wife was. The coffin was simple and elegant. "I want to see her," I said. Her sister rested her hand on my arm. "I'm sorry. That won't be possible. We did not want an open coffin." I said back, aware that my voice was too loud but unable to help myself. I was not asked. The family. We've had a lot of decisions to make in such a short space of time. I shook my head. I want to see my wife one more time before she is laid to rest. That's not too much to ask. It turned out it was. The undertaker explained that it was too late now, with the funeral less than 24 hours away. He told me he was sorry as well. I stormed out. Looking back, I know I was not thinking straight. I had lost the person I loved most in the whole world. The person I wanted to have children with and grow old beside. The future had been taken away from me. Even so, I can't justify what I did next. After going home to shower and change, I drove back to the Chapel of Rest. I apologized for my earlier behavior and asked if it would be possible to spend some time with my wife, to sit in private in the room where she was. I was taken through and told to take as much time as I needed. At the apartment, I had picked up a small selection of tools and put them in my coat pockets. I took them out and used them to open the coffin. I was crying as I removed the coffin lid. I stared in disbelief at what was revealed. My wife's body was encased in spider webs. She lay within a myriad of threads. I could make out her face underneath the web, the outline of her eyelids, her mouth, her nose. I could see that she was wearing a plain white smock. My pulse racing. I reached out to touch her face. My fingers rested on the filaments, which masked her once and still beautiful features. At the pressure of my fingers, a spider scurried into view. Its dark body and long legs flickered, and then it was gone, somewhere within the coffin. I could now see some spiders in the web, all perfectly still. I did not know how they came to be in the coffin, how they had not been noticed when the coffin was sealed, leaving them undisturbed to construct their webs. But that did not matter to me, because their presence was a blessing. The realization of this rushed through my body. I believed that other creatures that found their way into the coffin after she was buried would be kept at bay by this gossamer layer, that it would protect her. For the first time since her death, I felt a moment of comfort. I knelt by the open coffin and wept and said goodbye. I can barely remember the funeral or the days that followed. I was on a compassionate leave from work and spurned everyone who reached out to me. I sat in the apartment by myself, burning with grief. I don't know what day or time it was when I saw the spider. I was in the bedroom. I can't recall why I had drifted into there. I slept very little, but when I did, it was on the sofa in the front room. I had not been near the bed. I could not bear the thought of being alone there. The spider was in a corner near the floor. Its web spanned the world from the edge of the skirting board to the intersection of the walls. I sat on the floor and watched it working, growing its web. It was dark when I got to my feet. I had an idea. I opened the window, then went through into the kitchen. The fridge, like the rest of the place, was filthy. I took all the pieces of meat in there and had gone off and placed them on the floor of the bedroom. Then I went outside and began collecting spiders. I brought 24 or so back in an old lunchbox and left them in the bedroom. Clouds of flies had already descended on the meat. I closed the door, left nature to take its course. The best way I can put into words what I was doing is to say I wanted to create a haven for the spiders. Most people vacuum them up or rinse them down the plunge hole when they see a spider. These spiders would be able to thrive in the space I made for them. It was my way of saying thank you to the beautiful creatures who had wrapped my wife safe in their web. That was 6 months ago. I had done a lot of thinking since. I'd been angry as well, suddenly furious. I'd broken down in tears. I had not been in control, but there had been quieter times when I had remembered the good times with my wife, the amazing person she was, and I would never forget her. I would never stop loving her unconditionally, but I had made the decision that I needed to start living again, for her as much as myself. It is what she would have wanted. I imagined her looking at the pigsty the apartment had become and the unwashed mess that was me and telling me it was time to get my ass in gear. I showered and shaved. I didn't have any clean clothes, so I found the cleanest I could and told myself I would go to the store later and buy new jeans, t-shirts, socks, the works. I had not been in touch with my old work for a while and did not know if I still had a job. So I texted my boss and asked if we could meet the following week. Then I set about furiously cleaning the apartment. I used clothes that I would never wear again as cloths, powered up the vacuum, filled a dozen bin bags. My limbs were aching and I had a couple of dizzy spells. I was not used to this level of activity, on top of which I had not eaten or drank anything all day. But still it felt good. And there was one more thing to do. During the course of the day, I had made another decision. I needed to move. There was too many memories here. I would take photos, put the details online, get the place sold. After I had cleared out the bedroom, I had not been in there since creating the haven for the spiders. I took a deep breath and opened the door. The room had become an almost alien landscape. Webs reached out over every surface, layer after layer of them. It was impossible to tell where one began and the next ended. I felt strangely exhilarated as I entered the room. My footsteps set dozens of spiders into motion. Small dark shapes hurrying along strands that stretched from the ceiling to the floor. I did not know where to begin. A section of web I had disturbed as I had moved had become attached to my hair. I brushed it away, only all I achieved was to get more stuck around my hand. I cursed and accidentally breathed in the strands of the web. I tried to spit it out and wave my arms around in annoyance. There was so much web though. It was on my face and my chest, all over my arms. It was irritating my eyes and my nostrils. I needed to get out of there, only I stumbled, fell, and second by second, I became more entangled in the web. I began to cough as it became harder and harder to breathe. I struggled to get back to my feet, but could not, and realized with a mounting sense of panic that I was trapped. All around me, the spiders ran frantically in every direction I could see, repairing the damage I had caused. I thought at first, spinning new web, and then I realized as they came closer that they were strengthening the prison that I had naively walked straight into. I began to scream until my mouth was gagged by new spun web. My mind racing, I lay there and watched as my cage grew and slowly enveloped me. Wave after wave of panic gripped me, but I could not move. And then they came. The tips of their legs must have spanned more than 12 inches. Their bulbous bodies suspended between. There was 2, 3 of these monstrous arachnids, then more. They were moving slowly along the web, descending on me. I was too scared to do anything but watch as they crept closer until 3 were over my face, 1 over my neck, another 4 or so, I could not properly see, were gathering over my hands. The web, thank God, kept them off me. My relief was short-lived, as with nimble, swift movements, they eased their way through the weave, and I felt their legs touch my skin, felt something sticky began to spread over me. In the hours that followed, my skin began to burn, and then the flesh beneath. The monstrous spiders had been joined by their kin. Hundreds of spiders moved over me. They had crawled under my clothes, and the thick liquid from them covered most of my body. The pain was growing. It felt like my body was being eaten in two, as if acid was working its way through me. I knew what was happening. I had been so stupid. I was their prey, and they were feeding on me, breaking down my body so they could feast, as they had done with my wife. As this realization dawned on me, anger surged through me, a primal rage. I tensed every muscle, shook and struggled and raged a bit by bit. I was able to move. I fought, and I would not give up. I will never return to the apartment. When I staggered out into the hallway of the apartment block, I felt no pain, only a numb hatred. Now, as I wait for a plane to take me far from here, my wounds sting beneath dressings I had clumsily applied. This pain is nothing compared to what I feel inside. The spiders had not been protecting my wife inside the coffin with their covering of web. They had been preparing to devour her, and I had done nothing because I was blind to the truth. I saw goodness where there was only instinct, the drive to feed until there is nothing left, nothing but a husk, where once there had been a person. I'm a relatively small YouTuber. Not terribly small to the point where I get no attention, but not big enough for most of you guys to recognize me. I mainly do creepy urban exploration videos that usually don't capture anything, but I give a horror history of the place while I record around. Well, recently I bought what was supposed to be a haunted house, and decided to record my first day in it. Definitely going to move now. Every little sound makes me want to jump, including the leaky faucet in my bedroom's bathroom. I did the same deal as my normal videos. Put a GoPro on top of my head using a headband that was one size too tight. I dropped it down a cliff before, and gave a narration while walking around my house. There's a decent backstory to the house, but it is the same old cliche horror talk, like a serial killer who was finally caught, never confessed to anything, and all of the victims' bodies were missing their heads. Yes, that's what it was. I embellished the story quite a bit, but that's standard practice in my field. The few creepy moments that gave my channel the extra push is so desperately needed and could have been camera malfunctions or simply a homeless man upset at me crawling on his turf. I don't think I've ever actually experienced something paranormal in any of my videos. Until now. After I finish the video, do some basic editing and chop out the boring parts, I upload the video to YouTube and go to bed. I don't really think too much about it while I drift off. I woke up to my phone exploded. Not in the literal sense, but just with notifications. YouTube notifications to be precise. My heart rate jumped, as it normally means a video of mine blew up. I got in a very excited and giddy attitude that a kid gets when opening Christmas presents first thing in the morning. And then my attitude changed, as if the present was actually Cole all along. When I started reading the comments, yeah, the video blew up, but now I don't feel safe here anymore. 126. What the fuck was that? Bruh, you think you're so slick at 923, putting in some Halloween decor hanging from the shower? 10 out of 10 though, great SFX. I'ma be honest, didn't notice anything until 902, but then I just had to rewatch the whole thing. Scary shit, man. 025, 126, 159, 258, 504, 833, 902, 923. How are you not seeing this shit, man? It may be hidden on the camera, but you got a peripheral, right? I'm sure if I watched again, I'd find more. 8. Laugh my ass off. Time to leave. These were just some of the comments that I read, and all I could think about right now was watching the fucking video. I pop down in front of my desk, open my laptop, click on the file, and go to the first timestamp that everyone is talking about. 025. I paused the video and scanned the frame. It was nighttime, and this is just after I opened the front door of my new house, explaining how I had just bought it. The camera is peering inside, looking up the stairs up the second floor hallway towards the left, and a couch facing a TV. That can't be seen now. To the right, with an entryway into the kitchen only half visible through the doorway and behind the perpendicular couch. The lights to the kitchen and upstairs are off right now, but illuminated enough by the light in the living room. I scour the entire frame for a couple seconds before I see it. There, on top of the stairs. My blood turns to ice as I freeze in my chair. Is that a fucking head? Oh my gosh, is it looking at me? Most of the head looks to be behind the corner of the wall, at the base of the top of the stairs, laying on its side. All that's visible from the light in the living room on the shadowed face is its curly brown hair, forehead, eyes, and the bridge of its nose. The lifeless eyes glinted in the flashlight from my headset, casting sickening shadows across its face and on the wall behind it. I'm still frozen in fear, but now my blood is pumping heavily. I can feel the door behind me open, and something staring daggers in my neck, but I don't dare to turn around. Fuck no. I play the video and the camera immediately looks back towards my car. Something about it being a beater, but the house is new. And pans back inside the house. The head isn't there anymore, but that only made the feeling in my stomach even worse. Where the fuck is it now? In the video, I entered the threshold of the house and walked into the living room, moving my head around to show everyone the detail and size of the room. I go deeper into the lore of the house while walking around, showing off my collection of geeky shit to my viewers. My next timestamp rolls around and I pause the video again. 1:26. I look around but see it almost immediately. This one was at the stairwell again, but now the view was from where the TV is, meaning I could only see the ending part of the stairs, heading towards the doorway and the wall it connected to. You know that large space above most stairs right as you begin walking up that's level with the ceiling of the next floor? That was the layout of my house. Right at the corner of that opening, the head was peering at me, upside down. I could still only see the same parts, but the curly hair was extended by the gravity. The glint in those horrifying and dead eyes remained the same. Almost immediately afterwards in the video, I headed into the kitchen. So, when I played the video, the head went away instantly from view as the camera angle moved to the entryway of the kitchen. I fast forward to the next timestamp to see it again, shaking as I move the mouse. I didn't need to pause the video to see this one. 1:59. You could still only see the same parts of the head, but it was peering out of the semi-opened microwave in the back end of the kitchen. Upon a closer look, if you pause the video, you could see something dripping on the handle. I couldn't handle much more of this. I felt like I was about to throw up, and I just wanted to leave the house. The feeling of being watched grew ever so stronger, so as I moved my cursor to the top comment on my video, shit, the shower one, 9:23, at the end of the video, was so fucking terrifying. You know how to make good content, man, and great acting. If it's not acting, run. I hover over the timestamp, wondering if the click was worth it. It wasn't, but I did it anyway. I just had to know. 9:23. My hands are slick and my shakiness made me pause the video on accident. When entering the bathroom, like I did in the video, you couldn't see anything in the shower. The curtains were drawn, and I have unique shower curtains, as in it was curtains, plural. 2 half curtains that could open up from the side or in the middle like ones on a window. There was a foot gap in the middle, so that when I was walking in, you could only see the shelf and the safety railing holding my washcloths. You only see it for a second, and with the speed the camera was moving, pausing it made it a little blurry. It took place in the bathroom that was connected to my bedroom, the one right to the left of my desk when sitting at it. But when I walk to my mirror and the video looks through it, the angle was just perfect to the point where you could see the shower nozzle in the distance. My camera only lingered there for a couple seconds, but that was all that was needed. Now you could see the whole head. It had the whole thing shoved through the severed throat opening on its neck, with the nozzle angling downwards and coming out of its mouth. The nozzle was dripping blood and the red liquid was pouring down the shaft of the shower head. But that was not the part that freaked me out the most. It was my head. My fucking head with its mouth gaping open. My curly hair. My forehead. My neck. My ears. My lifeless eyes. All of it was mine. I sat there, frozen, heart ready to simply burst out of my chest, like in that scene of Alien, only with more gore. I couldn't think straight. Only one thought was going through my head, and that was to pack up and leave this place forever, and hire someone else to move me out. And then I heard it. A wet thud from my bathroom. A wet thud from my shower. Hi, Sheila. I pasted on my brightest smile. Hi, Carol. It's so nice to see you. Thank you so much for inviting me. Of course. Carol's makeup looked fantastic. It always did. And her white teeth were perfectly straight. Is that the ambrosia salad? Go ahead and set it on the table. There. Bob's almost done grilling up the burgers. I headed to the indicated table along the backyard fence. Bob gave me a nod as I passed, too intent on grilling to chat. Practically everyone from the neighborhood was here. I noted as I set the bowl on the table. At least, anyone Carol deemed worthy of attending her weekend barbecue. Hey Sheila, Francis beckoned me over to a gaggle of neighbors, all sipping lemonade while admiring Carol and Bob's new deck. Glad you could make it. Of course. I gave Francis a tight hug. Out of everyone, she was the only person who felt like a real friend. Glad to see you too. Did you try the lemonade? She said, holding up her glass. No, I just got... Carol made it, Francis said, looking me dead in the eye. From scratch. Oh. I glanced over at Carol, who was watching me despite Dan from down the street talking her ear off. I'll go try some right now. I headed back to the refreshment table and poured myself my glass from the ice-cold pitcher. My hands were shaking so badly I was terrified I'd spill, but I managed to make a proper glass. I scurried back to the gaggle. I said, taking a sip. Wow, that really hits the spot. I'll have to ask Carol for her recipe. I thought the same thing, Francis said, smiling. What do you think, Barbara? She said, gently elbowing the small woman beside her. Isn't it delicious? What? Oh, yes, it's fantastic. I felt bad for Barbara. She was always on Carol's bad side. Her hair was always a little ratty. Her clothes were unfashionable. And she was terribly forgetful. Today she looked even more tired than usual and her mascara had smudged beneath her eyes. Just as I was about to ask her if she was alright, a cheerful shout interrupted the small talk. Burgers are ready, Bob announced proudly, waving his spatula. Get 'em while they're hot. Dutifully, we all lined up by the grill. Carol took her place beside Bob, handing out paper plates with one burger each. Condiments are on the refreshment table, she called. And help yourself to the side dishes. Y'all worked hard on them. You should enjoy them. Laughters and call of assent followed as the line drifted over to the refreshment table. I got a bit of mac and cheese, fried okra, and potato salad. I didn't dare to take a serving of my own dish. That was a dangerous faux pas at a Carol shindig. Being the gracious hostess she was, Carol waited until everyone else was served before getting her own plate. Then she went from group to group, chatting with every guest. How we doing over here? She said, sliding up to our group. Wonderful, Francis said, giving Carol what seemed to be a genuine smile. I've always wondered what Francis was in her past life. If I had to guess, I'd say spy master or beauty consultant. Something that required lying often and well. This burger is superb. Bob sure knows how to grill. He sure does. Carol's eyes drifted over to Barbara's plate. What's wrong, Barb? You haven't touched your burger. Barbara started like a frightened mouse. Oh, I just haven't been feeling well, she said, offering a weak smile. Been a bit out of sorts. Carol was undeterred. Maybe eating a little something would perk you up, huh? Barbara looked like she was about to cry. I guess. When Barbara didn't move, Carol's brow furrowed. Well, go on, she prompted. With everyone watching, Barbara picked up the burger and took a small bite. She chewed with effort, then swallowed. Her forced smile looked more like a grimace. She said. That was delicious. Carol's expression cleared. There you go. Isn't that better? Said Barbara, looking sick. I prayed she didn't vomit until Carol was out of earshot. Great. Well, I better check on the other guests. With that, Carol was off to the next gaggle, who welcomed her with gleeful exclamations. You did good, said Francis, patting Barbara on the shoulder. Barbara sighed in relief. A tear escaped before she could scrub her eye with the back of her hand. I'm so tired. I was up late putting out fires for my boss, and I completely forgot about the potato salad until 2 a.m. That's rough, I said, but honestly, I was relieved. As much as I hated these gatherings, at least I wasn't Barbara. I know that makes me a terrible person. That's why I'm here. That's why we're all here. Conversation turned toward more normal topics. Our jobs, the lawns, Linda's new haircut. Does she even look in the mirror? We were laughing about a client at Francis's nail salon when a scream drew our attention. Carol stood with her plate in one hand, the other raised for all to see. In it was a black hair. There was a hair in my potato salad, she screeched. As one, we all turned to look at Barbara. Tears began to stream down her face, her hands shaking so badly she dropped her paper plate. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. I'll make it up to you. I promise. This is disgusting. Carol sneered as the hair went up in flames, ash drifting away on the breeze. You could have made people sick. Help me. Barbara looked from me to Francis, her eyes like a trapped animal's. Francis and I backed away, pleading silently for her to understand. Help me, please. How fucking hard is it to make something as simple as potato salad? Carol pointed her finger. As we watched, Barbara's face began to melt. Her scream quickly turned to gurgles. Help me, she mumbled, reaching out to us, her flesh dripping from her fingers, revealing the bones beneath. Me. Slowly, she melted into a puddle on the immaculate lawn. Oh, what a mess, I started as Carol appeared behind us, looking down at Barbara's remains with revulsion. Let me clean that up. She pointed her finger again, and Barbara sunk into the ground, leaving smooth, grassy lawn behind. There we go, she said, brightening. Turning to Francis and I, she asked, Are we enjoying ourselves? I plastered the smile back on my face. Of course, I said in an overly cheery voice. the tears at the corner of my eyes threatening to spill. A hand on my back steadied me. "We're having a great time," Frances said, her voice smooth as butter. "Thank you again for inviting us." "Of course. I love having y'all as neighbors," she said with all the cheeriness of a sunflower. "Let me know if you need anything, okay?" "Will do." The two of us watching her go, Frances's hand pressing more firmly into my back. "Just keep your head down," she whispered. "You'll make it through, I promise." I nodded, then stuffed my mouth with mac and cheese. My appetite is gone, but knowing if I didn't clean my plate, there'd be hell to pay. Shout out to my superfans, Sweet Black Swan, Tacey, and Brooklyn. I really appreciate you guys supporting my channel, and I really look forward to making more content for everyone.